In the last video, we talked about the high cost of living in Canada. But if you decided that you could still live with the high cost of living in Canada, then let's talk about taxes and government policies. In this video, I'm going to talk about how much of your paycheck you'll actually have left at the end of the month after you pay all those taxes.
Canada is known for its beautiful landscapes, welcoming communities, and high standards of living, but it has a dirty little secret. One of my friends from El Salvador told me about a YouTuber who was promoting for Latinos to move to Canada. I will be honest with you, I lived in Canada for 50 years of my life, and Canada is not what it used to be. It has a real dark side. There are many reasons why some of us have chose to leave Canada. I made a whole video series explaining Canada's dark secret and why you were being lied to. Don't move to Canada until you watch this series.
Renters in Canada have never had it so bad, and it could get even worse.
More Canadians than ever before are having to turn to food banks to get by.
Canada's social programs and infrastructure are funded by your taxes, but middle-class earners and small business owners pay the brunt of those taxes. Additionally, recent regulation changes in business and housing and personal finance can feel restrictive in Canada. Canadians who are seeking lower taxes and more business-friendly opportunities are leaving the country en masse. People are going where they can retain more of their earnings and enjoy greater economic freedom. I have an opinion, but it's not just an opinion. I brought the receipts. Let's get into it. See this chart on the Canadian federal tax rates? So if you're in the middle class, you probably make between $56,000 and $150,000 per year. And you'd have to make at least that in order for you to pay a mortgage or rent. So between $55,867 and $173,205, you would be paying between 20.5% to 26% of federal income tax. If you lived in Ontario like we did, you'd be paying 9.15 to 11.16% in provincial income tax. So that's 29.65% at the low range to 37.16% in the high range just for your income tax. But that's not all that comes off your paycheck. Let's take a look. I'm going to go into the payroll deductions online calculator, or as we affectionately called it, the PDOC calculator. We're going to have a little friend that we're going to use as an example. We're going to call her Juanita Lopez. Miss Juanita Lopez has moved to Canada because she's seen on YouTube that Canada is the place to go to have her future and to be able to make enough money to send home to her parents. Here she is. Okay, so we have Juanita Lopez, and she wants to move to Canada because she's been promised a really good life and good wages, at least $15 an hour minimum wage. And let's just say Juanita was coming from El Salvador, which is very low minimum wage, about $365 per month. Okay? Per month. So let's do the math on that. So for $365 a month, Juanita was making $2.12 an hour. Now, I remember a day when I first started work, I was 13. I worked at a convenience store, and then we made $3.25 an hour. And I think we got a raise to $3.50 over the time I'd worked at that little store. And that was my very first job. I babysat before that since I was 11. I've been working for a really long time, so I'm glad I retired. So let's just say Juanita here, she's going to move to Ontario because, that's my stomping ground. And she's been told she's going to make a really good living and be able to send money home to her parents. So let's just see if that's going to work out the way she thinks. Also, Juanita thinks she might buy a home because that's what everyone dreams of. As a young person, you want to be a homeowner, you want to be self-sufficient, and you just want to have a really good, comfortable lifestyle, let's just say. So we're going to go through a few scenarios for Juanita because she's going to be looking for a job, which we're going to go over in a separate video about how easy it is to get a job in Canada. I'm going to go through a few scenarios with her salary so we can kind of see what is it she'd have to make in order to send money home to her mom and dad. For our example, Juanita, she is not going to be unionized, so we don't have union fees. And she won't have any other employer deductions like pension or RSP contributions or any income at source deductions. Just straight pay. So we can do a simple calculation so you can easily compare if Juanita was better off in El Salvador or Ecuador or Nicaragua or anywhere else in Latin America, or she's better off in Canada. Let's just go through this. Oh, and one other thing. We have to say that she hasn't reached her maximum for her CPP or her EI contributions for the year because that's important. When I worked in my job around July, August, I reached the max of those. So the government stopped taking them off my paycheck, but what my employer decided to do was then just add a little bit extra into my pension each year at that time. So I had one paycheck that looked a little wonky, and I think every other one was just a little bit more than they had been. But there was that wonky one that was like seemed like a lot more. It's where you reach the maximum of your CPP and EI contributions. CPP is the Canada Pension Plan, and EI is the Employment Insurance Plan. We'll call it a plan. I don't know if you make a plan for that. But these are deductions that come off your paycheck when you live in Canada. And if you're ever unemployed, supposedly, they give you back some of the money that you've been paying into this plan for potential unemployment times. And your CPP is for your pension. So when you retire, based on a very long mathematical calculation on 40 years of work, they determine if they're going to give you anything and how much that's going to be. Yeah, and you only get that, I think, you can take it early at 60, and then normally at 65 you take out your CPP. Don't quote me on that, though, because I'm not that old yet. We're going to do a few scenarios with Juanita. I have several charts set up already in advance with different pay systems, so we can kind of see what is it she's going to have to make in order to be able to afford all the things we talked about. Sending money home to mom and dad, saving up to buy a home. Maybe she made enough we could even retire one day. Okay, so right now Juanita has applied for a job and she's making $20,000 for the year. That's her gross. We'll call it a salary. That turns out to be $9.62 an hour. Now that is below minimum wage in Ontario. I don't know if every province's minimum wage is $15. So maybe she hasn't moved to Ontario yet. Maybe she's just looking around at what province is best for her. And she's found this job for $20,000. Doesn't make a lot an hour. $9.62 an hour, or weekly it's $3.84. So when she looks at this job, she's like, wow, that's a whole month I was making in El Salvador at $3.65. Well, not really, because that's American, this is Canadian, but let's just pretend it's similar, even though the dollar value is quite low right now in Canada. But $3.84 a week as opposed to $3.65 a month. So that already looks like it's at least tripled her salary, right? If you do the conversion, whatever. Because that's $1,666.67 monthly. That already sounds like amazing. I don't know what is $365 Americans, about 500 Canadian-ish. Somebody could do the math on that one. Yeah, so that's like triple her salary. So she's like, oh, for sure. If I make triple what I did in El Salvador, I can support my parents. That'd be great. And I have a sibling who wants to go to university, and I could give him some money for that. Let's just play this out. So in her deductions, she has her federal income tax, and at only making $20,000 a year, that's actually pretty good. To make the calculation simple, I'm just paying her once a month. This way, it's easy math, and I have a nice little table here. So per month, she would be making $1,666.67 gross, and she'd be paying $19.35 for her federal tax deduction, $5.25 for her provincial tax deduction, for a total tax deduction of $24.60, and then we take off her CPP, that's $81.81 a month, and her EI is $27.67 per month. So she'd be taking home $1,532.59 Canadian. That's maybe $1,100 American-ish. Probably, maybe, if she gets rent. Wait, no. Would she ever find a place for rent under $1,000? Possibly not. I've had some comments to some of my videos, and even one of them was somebody talked about being in Vancouver and it was $1,800 a month for rent. Unlikely she's going to be able to have that job and still be able to live independently. So that probably isn't going to work out. Okay, so let's just say Juanita's moved to Ottawa to get her job. I was going to say Toronto, but everyone tells me Toronto's not the center of the universe. I fully agree. I absolutely hate Toronto. So I just went on Kijiji to look for what her rent would be. We're going to do a whole episode in this series on housing and how she could find a house. In that one, I do actually focus on Toronto because that's where a lot of immigrants go, let's be honest. But for this example, I went on Kijiji and I just did lowest price first. And once I got past the sponsored ads for Ottawa, the lowest price I found for an apartment for her is $1,500. Now, we just said she's only making $1,500.32 per month at $20,000 a year. She couldn't even get the rent. She couldn't get her bus pass. She couldn't get anything. She would have $32 left over at the end of the month to do what? She'd have to live in a tent on the street, like many people do. I don't know if you've heard. There's a thriving tent city community in Canada right now. So let's just say Juanita cannot have a job for $20,000. Now that's, of course, not even the minimum wage in Ontario. So let's just skip ahead. We're going to give her a nice increase. She's going to double her wages. She's going to be making $40,000 a year. Okay, so $40,000 a year translates into $19.23 an hour. Now that's above minimum wage. So honestly, she probably wouldn't start out making more than minimum wage, but for this example, I just want to show you because her goals are to send money home to her family and, be able to survive and maybe save money for a house in the future. Well, let's just say she's making $40,000 a year, which is more than minimum wage. Let's get this straight. It's more than minimum wage. $19.23 an hour or $769.23 a week, or $33.33 per month. So in that case, taken off of her deductions would be $250.33 for her federal income tax, $141.72 for provincial income tax, which adds up to $392.05 for taxes. Don't forget she has to pay her CPP. That's $180.98, and her EI premiums have, of course, doubled as well at $55.33. So of her gross of $33.33, she's going to be taking home $2,704.97. Now, if she has got that apartment for rent at $1,500 and she has to pay $176.28 for her bus pass, that's for Toronto, not Ottawa, but anyway, it's about the same. Her utilities are going to be about $125 a month for her electricity, and maybe if she has natural gas that she has to pay for. She'll have her internet and telephone very modestly, because I paid $95 a month just for my cell phone, and our Starlink was $200 or something. Starlink is expensive, so I went kind of modest. I did like a Rogers kind of idea with a bundle, maybe a small package. So for her phone and internet, it's $120 a month. Groceries is going to be minimum $250 a week. She may have to eat at the food bank. To be honest, that's $1,000 a month, ish, because I didn't do it multiply by 4.3. I just multiplied by 4, just for simplicity. And for entertainment, if she wanted to go anywhere and do anything at all, go to the movies or go with friends, I put $150. Maybe Juanita's not a socialite, and at this salary, you're going to see she can't be. Clothing and other household things, buying things for her home, toilet paper, garbage bags, whatever that's going to be, buying a new jacket for winter because it's cold in Canada. I don't know if anyone told you. $200 a month. We're going to set aside for that. $20 for medical. Now, that's not to see the doctor necessarily, but maybe she's on medication. Maybe she goes to the dentist every 6 months. You're going to have to set aside at least $20 a month to pay for the cleaning for the dentist every 6 months. Anyway, her monthly expenses have just gone up to $3,291.28, and that is actually going to be her monthly expenses. So if Juanita is making $2,704 net, she's going to be on the street again because she can't afford these things. Maybe she gets her rent for $1,000 instead of $1,500. She would still be short by $86. Maybe she doesn't have entertainment expenses. Maybe this, maybe that. But you know what? She's not sending money home to her parents either, because she can barely afford to live on minimum wage. This actually, remember we said, is better than minimum wage. This is $19 an hour, not $15 an hour. Poor Juanita is going to need a few roommates for her bachelor pad. I'm not sure how that's going to work. Maybe she finds a rich guy or something. I don't know. So let's just move on. Maybe Juanita's got a little education and she can do a bit better than a minimum wage job anyway. Maybe she's got some computer science training or an engineering, because I'll go through the job market in the next episode. Those are things that are more in demand, or medical. Maybe she's gone and she's a nurse. Maybe we can get her a better job. Let's just try to get her a better job so she can get money home to mom and dad and maybe save up for a home one day. So in our next scenario, she's going to be making $60,000 a year. Now, this is another $20,000 increase. That's actually more than when I started working, I made $33,651. That was my salary, $33,651. And I started now 27 years ago. This is almost double what I started out with. Maybe there's a starting salary at $60,000. I'm not sure. When we go through the job market, we'll find out. That gives her $28.85 an hour. So that's actually really good, right? Compared to $2.12 an hour in El Salvador. This is like, she's going to think she's the queen. She's usually going to feel like she's the queen because she's making so much money. Telling her parents, Mom and Dad, I'm making $28.85 Canadian, give or take. So maybe that's $20 an hour US, whatever. So that gives her weekly $1,153.85, and monthly $5,000. Ooh, gross. We gotta go through the taxes. So because she's making so much money, the government, of course, takes their pound of flesh. And for a federal tax, it's almost $500. It's $497.63. Provincially, they're taking $259.30 for a total of $756.93 off her $5,000 just in tax. Don't forget the EI and the CPP. They're going to take their pound of flesh too. CPP is going to take $280 of flesh and 15 cents. And your EI is going to be $83. So poor Juanita, thinking she's getting $5,000 a month, is actually only making $3,879.92. And if we kept all of her expenses the same as in the last example, she could have extra, after she's paid her utilities and groceries and entertainment and clothing, kept a little aside for her dental appointments every 6 months. She's going to have left over $588, to send home to mom and dad or to save up. I think at this point she can only do one of those things, right? $588.64 Canadian is roughly, drumroll please, $421.37. Although for mom and dad, that's a whole other salary. So that's awesome. That's like having her work in El Salvador right now. It's a little bit better than her working in El Salvador at minimum wage. Although she could have had a job maybe at a call center. If she was that skilled to get a job for $60,000 in Canada, what would she have made in El Salvador as a skilled worker? That's a whole other example, because if she's making $60,000, she has to have some training in computer science. Maybe she has a job at a call center. And I know from my friends, they make, I believe it's their gross. It could be not their gross, but they make $900 to $1,100 a month. I believe that is their net, actually, not their gross. But still, right now, that's better than $400, isn't it? Maybe she could have stayed at home and helped mom and dad a bit better and not had to been so far away, living in a strange country, in a strange city with a strange language, working with strange people, paying strange taxes. Just saying. If Juanita was that skilled to have a $60,000 a year job in Canada, she probably would have done really well for herself in El Salvador. Maybe not, but maybe. Let's just pretend Juanita has actually been working in Canada for several years now, getting a bit ahead, and she's had a raise. For this raise, she's making $80,000. Now, I can tell you right now, I worked for the federal government, and I worked probably 15-ish years to get $80,000. But of course, this was 12 years ago, so $80,000 is nothing now, right, with inflation and everything. So maybe she could get an $80,000 a year job as a raise after working for a few years, maybe not 15 years, maybe she only has to work 5 years. 5 years time, Juanita might find her dollars worth a lot less because of inflation. But let's just go for this example. If you're making $80,000 a year in Canada, that's $38.46 an hour, $1,538.46 a week, or $66.67 per month. Sounds like a lot of money. But of course, the government, with a pound of flesh, takes $829.96 for federal income tax, $420.78 for provincial income tax, $1,250.74 total in tax, $379.31 for CPP, and $110.67 for EI. So in total, if you were making $80,000 a year, you're only taking home $4,925.95 net per month. And again, if we kept all the expenses the same, you would actually have a profit of $1,634.67. Now, I say profit, but I have transportation as $176 as a bus pass or a Toronto Transit pass. If you were making money, you might want to have a car, depending on if you wanted to maybe lower your living expenses by not living directly in a city. You might be just outside a city, finding a bit better rent or a bigger place for that same amount of money. $1,500, you're not going to get a lot for rent, no matter where you go, unless you have some roommates. Maybe you rented a house and you got a couple of roommates and you're able to get maybe that rent down to $1,000. Maybe you have two other roommates, you're paying $3,000 a month, everyone pays $1,000. Utilities are probably going to be a bit higher if you have a whole house, and you may have to have stuff like a lawnmower to take care of the grass, or shovels, or a snowblower to take care of the snow in the wintertime. So, I mean, with each thing that you can kind of get a little bit better on, you have to think about the other expenses. Home ownership is not like living in an apartment building. You live in an apartment building, somebody takes care of your garbage, take care of the snow, they take care of the grass, they take care of everything for you, and you have your own home. Even though your rent might be a little less because you're outside of a city, you're going to spend more in gas, you're going to have a car, you're going to have to pay for home maintenance things that you're going to have to do in the home. You may have to pay for more furniture because it's a bigger place, right? It's hard to get ahead. That's my point. It's really hard to get ahead because there's always these other expenses that you may not have thought about. I'm just giving the basics. And maybe she came with some things and lives very modestly and minimalistic, and let's just move on. Maybe she's made $100,000 a year. Maybe she's got some really good training. Maybe she's in the medical field. Maybe she is a nurse and she's found a job now, and maybe she's got a promotion over time where she's now making $100,000. It's not going to be a right off the bat. I can tell you right now, you're going to have to work many years to get the $100,000. Hourly, that's $48.08. Weekly, that's $1,923.08. Monthly, that's $8,333.33. That's a lot of money, isn't it? That sounds like a lot of money. I don't know. Of course, when you make that kind of money, there's taxes. In this case, we're paying 28.39% total deduction. The tax alone for federal tax is $1,168.21. Provincial tax is $581.04. Your total tax deductions are $1,700.49. Ouch. Your CPP is up to $478.48, and your EI is $138.33. So from $8,333.33, you're only taking home $5,969. That sounds like a lot, but you've had to work a long time to get $100,000, and I bet by now Juanita's found a husband and has some kids. I'm betting. in order to have gone this far along in her career. I'm imagining that's what she's done because her mommy is expecting grandbabies, just saying. But if she kept her expenses the same, which would be highly unlikely, she had a family, because that's only $1,000 for groceries a month, and you're at least talking double if you have a family. But let's just pretend she's very frugal somehow, and she's able to save $2,675 a month. Maybe she's taken that $6,075 sending home to mom and dad. It's, that's over $500 American, and she's taken that $2,000 and squirreled it away for buying her house with her husband and children, maybe. And she doesn't have any car expenses and other things right now because she's still on her Toronto Transit Pass or her OC Transpo Pass. Again, $1,500 is more like for a bachelor pad, so she actually has anyone else, like a husband or something, maybe he's paying the same amount for the rent and they get a bigger place. Sounds like she's doing good. She could probably save up to buy a house. We'll talk about the housing market because $2,000 a month savings for a house will be a very long time before she can actually buy a house. $24,000 a year, okay, then maybe she could if she has no other expenses. Let's just go to where I was when we left Canada because we were having a hard time making ends meet, family of 5, and I was making about $115,000. Sounds like a lot, I know. That's $55.29 an hour. Or weekly it'd be $2,211.54. Well, mine was slightly different because I didn't get paid per month, so it's a little bit different. I get paid every 2 weeks, but for monthly it's $9,583.33. Wow, that's a lot of money. Sounds like a lot of money. The government takes $1,431.78 off in federal tax, $756.52 off provincial tax. That's a total of $2,188.30 in taxes. Now $552.85 goes to CPP and $159.08 goes to EI. That gives you a net of $66.83. So for $9,583 to $6,683. That went down really fast. In her example, where she has $1,500 of rent, $176 for transportation, $125 for utilities. Utilities is way higher for us. Way higher. $120 for internet and phone. Like I said, my phone bill alone was $95. My cell phone, not my husband's cell phone. He did pay as you go because we're trying not to live super crazy here. And I think it was like $30 a month or 15, somewhere between 15 and 30 if you get a top up with data. And $1,000 a month for groceries. That's implausible if you have a family. This is not going to happen. It's going to be at least $2,000 a month if you have a family. $150 for entertainment. Well, we didn't really do entertainment. I think it was September 2021 the last time we went to the movies. It was right before the lockdowns and we took our students with us. We had 2 students and we're like, let's go to the movies now while we're in Ottawa because we don't know when we're going to go to a movie again. That was September 2021, right before the lockdown. Clothing and household, $200. Now, if you have a house, you know that the things go wrong. The pump goes in the well and, all of a sudden you need a new hot water heater and maybe you're getting a rental if you get rentals. Our rentals for our hot water heater, our furnace, and our air conditioner, $238 a month. Just the rental, not the natural gas or electricity that goes into those things. $238 a month. Reliance Home Comfort. Horrible company. Don't deal with them. Medical, $20. Well, I have asthma, so I'm on medication. My medication with my copay, because my government job paid 80% of it, my copay was about the $20. So dental and stuff for the kids, yes, my work paid for that too, 90% of it. And there's a limit, as we learned with Lawrence and his cavities. And one time went to the dentist. I think we went 3 times that month to get all his fillings done. And by the last visit, I had to pay $600 because we ran out of the limit. I didn't know I had a limit. I think it was $2,000 was the limit, or $2,500, something like that. And by the time he's got like his 5th filling done, I had to pay $600 or maybe it was $800. I don't know. I blanked it out. It was terrifying, really terrifying. So she would be left with $3,391 at the end of the month if all things remained equal. But by the time she would have a job that would be making $115,000, I'm guessing she's married and has a few kids like I did. I didn't have $3,391 left at the end of the month. I was struggling. Didn't always get through the month. That's what credit cards are for, right? Canada is not what they claim it is. It's not the land of milk and honey. It is a land of taxes and government regulations. So stay tuned for the next part of this series. It's going to be about Juanita getting a job and how the job hunting goes in Canada. And if she still wants to go, we got to make sure she gets a really good paying job because those taxes are murder.